Hey everybody, we're going to talk about 4 different kinds of hair today: straight, short, curly, dreaded. I have these terrible sketches and I'm not actually looking at a resource. I'm just using my knowledge of hair to give you guys a little bit of input. You are going to have to observe your own person in order to do this. Your person is going to be, your picture is going to be the best resource of all. But here are some tips. First of all, for hair, the good thing is it's not as difficult as graphite. You want to find a mid-tone value that is close to the hair. Okay, you'll have to look at your image to see how dark or light the person's hair is. And the first thing you want to do is put in large directional chunks of which way you think the hair flows. The way that your brush makes a mark on the paper and the direction that your brush goes is absolutely the most important part of painting hair. If you try to paint sideways when you're painting long hair, if you try to go back and forth horizontally instead of coming down kind of at a vertical wavy motion, you are not going to get something that looks like hair, okay? So right away you can see that I can fill this hair in quite a bit quicker than I can with graphite, okay? That is going to give you your first undercoat. So let me do this on the other side again, okay? Long, flowing hair, looking at your image to see which direction the hairs are going, and using a fairly large brush for this undercoat, because if you remember back to the graphite, you wanted to color hair in chunks. So this is the same thing. You're putting these chunks of hair down, okay? You're not thinking about hair going in one hair at a time. The great thing about a paintbrush is the paintbrush actually does have hairs on it, so you get these little grooves in the paint that kind of look like you're putting things in one hair at a time. I'm going to go ahead and hold this up for my class. So for hair, that's kind of your first layer. Big chunks that go in the direction of the hair. Then you're going to come back in with a smaller brush. My smaller brush is not great because my brushes in the pan aren't great. But now you're going to come back in and you're going to look at your image. Where do you have your little shadows happening in your hair? Because all hair have dark chunks of shadows. No matter how light the hair is, there's still places where this hair has shadows. One of the places is typically up by the part. Okay, so I'm just kind of guessing right now because, again, I don't have a resource. You're going to look on your resource. And one of the places in all hair types is you're going to now add these little wisps of shadow and dark value into the hair. Okay, so look up towards the part right now. Look at your image right now. Usually back down here behind the ear, there is shadow. You can use smaller marks for that shadow. There are also places in your hair that have highlight, usually towards the top of the head. So now you can go back in and put these much tinier marks in to add the shadow and add the highlight. I'm also going to post a couple of time-lapse videos from YouTube of people painting a complete head of hair. They're actually pretty insane, and they might not be as helpful as a step-by-step tutorial, but I would take a look at those just kind of show you. So for my class here, I'm going to hold this up. Those are typically where you have your darkest sections of hair, like down here underneath and up by the part. I'm going to talk about the next kind of hair now, and you can just keep learning. Oh, I put these on the back. What was I thinking? Oh, well, I guess my desk is going to get dirty. Here are some dreads, okay? Typically with braided or dreaded hairstyles, shorter hairstyles, you're going to have a little more texture, but dreads are just simply, or braids are simply little cylinders. So you have to figure out which way your light's coming in on your picture, on your resource. I'm going to bring my light in from this side, and my dread is going to go from light to dark down those dreads. So my first layer, I'm going to make light, then I'm going to go in with my medium, and then I'm going to go in with my darker for each dread. Each dread has to be done individually. This takes a little longer, but like actually, I am just doing these quickly, but it's not so bad. I used my finger to blend. Do you guys see that? I'm going to do one dread at a time. And then if I want to make that hair more textural, I can always take my brush and I can go back in. And I can texture the hair. Honestly, on my original portrait, the hair is really hard to see because most of it's covered by a scarf. So I just did a lot of textural mark making like this. Sometimes that sponging or that textural mark is good for hair. Same thing with what I just showed you. Up by the scalp, up by the part, and where the braids hit the head, there are going to be darker shadows kind of in between those braids. So your darkest parts are going to go up there on top. Okay? I know these are just quick tutorials, but they're just tips. For curly hair, you do the same thing again. You're going to come up with some kind of medium tone or whatever color the hair is. This would be darker hair. And when you first put your first layer down, you are going to move the paintbrush kind of in the directions that the hair is on the person. Okay, don't get too particular. You can actually layer up quite well for curly hair. Then I'll show you how to go back in with the smaller lines. So it starts off with big lines and big movements, and then you come back in with smaller lines of shadow and highlight for the hair. Okay, please know that these are super quick tutorials I'm doing here. I do want you to spend a little bit longer. I'm doing 4 heads of hair in like 7 or 8 minutes. So I want you guys to obviously take a little longer with your hair. And my blue's all gone on my palette, so now I just have this weird gray color, but whatever. Okay, so I have my curly hair down there, so I'll show you guys. Do you start to see the directions of my marks here? All right. And then same thing. I'm going to go back in with my darks and ask myself, even curly hair back behind the ears, they have more shadowed spots. Up by the part, there's more shadowed spots. Observation. You guys see how I'm now putting shadow spots in on top. Okay, again, I know these are very quick tutorials, but it gives you an idea of where to start. And my last one's pretty easy. And then for my in-class people, I'll show you a couple of people who have started hair up here, and I'll give you guys some ideas. For my last person, unfortunately, my color palette's really, but if you just have short hair, same thing. There's short hair on top of the head. Go directionally first. Come back in for the part with your shadows. That's going to be the easiest hair because you have less hair there. Obviously, if you're bald, then you need to fade like it's a sphere. So then there's no hair at all. But there's going to be your darkest part for like short hair. Okay? So big mark making first. Get the hair filled in first so you can't see through it. And then go back in with a smaller brush and do the smaller marks.